afternoon. My name is Roger Barrington, and I am reviewing Matthew Bourne's Cinderella, which is currently playing at the Wales Millennium Centre. For any of you unfamiliar with Sir Matthew's work, you may be unsurprised by his use of gender change. In 1995, at Sadler's Wells, in Swan Lake, he had all the traditionally played female swans played by men. So it may not be unsurprising that in this current production of Cinderella, one of the most traditional of folk stories, he has the fairy godmother transformed into a male character called the Angel. Sir Matthew explains his rationale for doing this.
Question and what sex should this character be? You know, does it have to be female? Does it have to be male? Would it be better in this context if it was a little different in some way? I usually have a reason for it. If I do change the gender of a character, I don't tend to do it for no reason. I usually have a thought behind it or an inspiration behind it. I thought about the character of the fairy godmother, and I just couldn't imagine her in this piece with a big dress and a wand or something. I don't know. I couldn't think of an image for it. And then I remembered various movies that have angels in. And if you think about guardian angel, seemed to be much better for a Cinderella, female lead character, with a guardian angel who was male rather than a female guardian. And I thought, well, that's interesting because he's almost like a father figure to this young girl. And I remembered movies like The Bishop's Wife with Cary Grant, who's an angel. He doesn't look like an angel, he doesn't have wings or anything, he happens to be an angel. There's also the great Christmas film, It's a Wonderful Life, where James Stewart is guided by an angel in a sense of it being a little bit like A Christmas Carol, you know, Dickens. And there's a couple of others as well, and Fred Astaire actually has played an angel a couple of times in a film called Daddy Longlegs. He plays an angel at one point. And so I thought, oh, there's some sort of dance aspect there that's interesting, and there's also something that really works for me as a story, a strong story idea. So we changed the fairy godmother into what we call the angel, and he's a guardian angel. And he's a magical figure, very clearly so, I think, in our version. And people are waiting for that moment. You know, that's the thing that's really helpful with Cinderella. When he appears, nobody's saying, who's he? They're all going, oh, the fairy godmother's a man.
And you know, it works a treat. It seems so appropriate to make the change, for the traditional story has a harder edge than you might expect in this version. It makes you get out of your slippers and into your Doc Martens. The setting is in the London Blitz during World War II, and Sir Matthew explains why he used this time period to tell this well-known story.
Well, the story of Cinderella is one of those stories that's very good for adaptation, and that partly because in any field, partly because it's a story that everyone knows. It's one of the most well-known stories. You'd be hard-pushed to find anyone who didn't have a vague idea of what that story is. So for dance theatre, where you're not using words, it's very good for adaptation because people already know aspects of it. Setting it during the London Blitz is not that bizarre an idea because there have been so many versions of Cinderella in different settings, in different periods. So it's, for me, the reason for setting it at that period was just how well the opportunities it gives for storytelling. For me, the image of the shoe, the discarded shoe in the rubble of the Blitz, said everything. It was about especially a glittery shoe or a glass slipper or something, you know, it's sort of something about that. It's very sort of hopeful in a way amongst the rubble, but also it suggests that someone has gone missing, and the story is all there, almost in that one image. So it was a story that sort of went well with the period that we were setting it in the sense that it's about someone who does go missing. It's about escapism. The rags to riches aspect of Cinderella is very clear in the story, really. But that idea of a young girl who is into escapism through movies, and that was the big way in which people used to escape. Cinemas were never as popular as they were during the Second World War. Cinema going was never as popular because it brought people together as well, was the other thing, which is a very big aspect of wartime experience. So all
Cinderella was written by Sergei Prokofiev between 1940 and 1944 during the height of the German offensive, the invasion of Russia. And I think the music does have a resonance with that period in time. There's a very dramatic effect to the music, and again, I think this is another reason why the setting in the Blitz is very appropriate. And it premiered in 1945 in Moscow, and Matthew tells you the reason why he decided to do this piece.
Well, my initial inspiration for this piece, for Cinderella, was the music of Prokofiev. That was the first thing that made me want to do it, really, was the music. And my first exposure to that was the Frederick Ashton ballet. I came to dance very late. I didn't start watching ballet at all till my late teens, and it was one of the first ballets that I saw that I really loved, and I sort of fell in love with that music. And that ballet was made in 1948, and a couple of years after the original premiere of the piece, the Prokofiev score. And it was, for me, music that conjured up a sort of atmosphere which was not completely fairy tale. And I knew I loved it and wanted to do something with it, but I didn't quite know what direction to go in. Then I read that it was actually written during the years leading up to its premiere, which was during the Second World War. It was probably shelved for a couple of years. If you then listen to it, which I did, with that period in mind, and with a lot of movies, wartime movies in mind, it does really sound like a film score of that era. A very good one, I have to say. High quality film score. But it's something about the music and that period really resonates very strongly. And so my first port of call, once I'd had that kind of revelation of that's what I wanted to do, to set it during that time, was to go to a lot of movies and things, which I was already a great movie fan, so I went to see or find.
Australian ballerina Ashley Shaw, in the title role of Cinderella, came across as a very talented dancer and really looked the part. In fact, I cannot recall ever being so enraptured by this little servant girl since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. William Bozier plays Harry the pilot, who first of all finds Cinderella, and then loses her, and then finds her again. He makes a very loving partner to Cinderella, and their pas de deux are excellent in the production. And there's one memorable scene which has the St. Paul's Cathedral in the background, taken, the very evocative photograph taken during the height of the Blitz, with the flames surrounding the cathedral. That plays as a backdrop, and there is a love scene between Cinderella and Harry, which is very evocative and actually quite erotic. Liam Mower plays the angel with a mix of grace and power, an ever-present character in the story who guides Cinderella for good and for bad, mostly for good, to her ultimate fate. The whole cast is very polished, what you would expect from a production like this. Didn't put a foot wrong as far as I could see, and great skill on show at all times. But the star aspect of this production has to be the directing and choreographing by Matthew Bourne, which is quite spectacularly magnificent and beautiful. Aided by Neil Austin, his lighting designer, they conjure up a huge number of memorable imageries in this production, and here are just a few. Act 1 of Scene 2 is at the Café de Paris, a very famous venue for a good number of years in London for a chic set who went there to dance and have a good time. On the 8th of March 1941, an incendiary bomb was dropped on the premises, which either killed or injured over 100 people. Of course, it's this venue that represents the ball from the story, and it's where Harry the pilot loses Cinderella for a while. The actual opulence of the cafe is very, very well represented in the design, and the effects when the bomb is dropped, causing the devastation, is amazing. It must have been a nightmare for Matthew Bourne to use choreography for this scene, because he had to be true, of course, to Prokofiev's music, and yet the dancers that are portrayed would have been very, very different, would have been performing very differently to what actually they're dancing to here. And he manages to do this very, very cleverly. He provides the effect of the period, but stays strictly to the score. In the final scene, which is Paddington Station, you've even got a steam train represented chugging along onto the stage. It's lavish. The attention to detail is also very, very impressive. Take a look at this poster taken from World War II, which features in a representation of a tube station for one of the scenes. The music is provided by Recorded Music, a specially commissioned orchestra, I think called the Cinderella Orchestra, 80-odd strong, who play the score together with bombs, or the representation of bombs imposed on it, and also, it's in Sensorand, so it's a very, very impressive recording as well. Irrespective of whether you like ballet or classical music, I can thoroughly recommend this production purely for its theatricality. It's quite amazing. And I've broken a promise to myself in that I've awarded it the maximum 5 stars, which I promised I would never actually do for a creative work. But I can't really foresee a much better production than this on stage in Cardiff or anywhere else. It runs, it has a short run, in fact, at the Millennium Centre. I think it runs until Saturday. There are some matinees performances on Thursday, that's Thursday the 5th, and Saturday the 7th. And if you can get a ticket, I would get one, because when I attended last night, the press night, the place was packed, and it was very well received, with many people giving it a standing ovation. Thank you very much for listening and watching this inaugural video review. I apologise for the rough edges. I hope to get better as time goes by, and goodbye.